Hey family, how you doing? Well, welcome again to another video, and always good to have you here. At the time of me doing this video, it's been it's been quite a busy week. Things I was trying to get to, I couldn't get to because I had some more pressing things that had to be taken care of, and yeah, it's been that kind of week. But I'm glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're here. At the time of this recording, we've had this tropical storm that came up the East Coast, and it doesn't sound like it was too bad. Also, although if you lived in New York City, there were some parts of New York City that experienced some flash flooding and all of that. So hopefully our people are okay there. And yeah, so other than that, it's been, this was a very busy week for me. But during this week, I was spending a considerable amount of time preparing for this video that you're about to watch. And so there's a lot of research, that went into it, and so much more that need to go into it, that can be added to it. I felt myself a lot of times rabbit trailing into other topics like, man, this would be a great, I need to include this. Okay, I need to include that. And you just get caught up because it's just so much information. So I had to discipline myself. I said, compile it, get right to the point, so it would be something that's easy to follow, for the people. So, yeah, so tonight's going to be, or this, at the time of this video, if you're watching it at night or during the day, this one's going to be one that where once again we're going to take a look at history, and we're going to look at it from a different angle. We're going to look at it from multiple angles, matter of fact, and you're going to find that there have been some things that was told to us that wasn't necessarily accurate, but it's okay. It's okay. Trust me, it is. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay. So let me go ahead and bring this, my slides up for this presentation, and let's go in and get into it. Okay. All right. So sorry, I didn't have a picture to put here. I was focused on everything else. But in this video, it's titled Revisiting the Kingdom of Judah. The Kingdom of Judah. Notice the spelling there. Okay. We're not talking about, the Judah that is mentioned in the Bible. We're talking about the Judah as it's on this map right here. Okay. This right here. Okay. Many of you are well familiar with this right here. And yeah. So, many of you who have come into, like we say, come into the truth. This has been a map that for many of us, and I'm including myself as well, that was very instrumental, in like, oh my goodness, that's our people. Because see, it says the kingdom of Judah. It's talking about the Bible, right? And Judah, we were sold and shipped into slavery, right? And so this was part of the slave coast. So that's the kingdom of Judah, right? Well, that's what we're going to look at in this video here. And, because we want to make sure we're looking at things correctly and accurately. OK, and so, that's what we're going to be looking at in this particular video. This gentleman here, and Pastor Stephen Darby, was very instrumental for so many people in coming into, like we say, coming into the truth, coming into an understanding that we are the people of the book. And he has done many great teachings, in short, this is a pastor that I guess somewhere down the line, he started finding out, how we are the people of the book. And he did this, one of his most memorable teachings, and it was called Negro Land. You see a screenshot of it on your screen here. And in this video, or rather in this teaching that he did, he referred to this map here. One of the many things he referred to. He referred to, this swath of land, and I'll show you that in a little bit, in Africa, on the upper west coast of Africa, called Negro Land. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. In fact, I'm going to make that into a separate video because there's a lot even in that. So, but anyway, he was very instrumental in what he taught in that. I know for myself, the way I came across it, I think we were living in Florida, And this video just kept popping up, Negro Land. I was like, okay, what's he talking about? What's this guy talking about? And so I watched it and I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, because at that time, I typically wasn't clicking on, I don't know, sermons. At that time in my life, I wasn't particularly clicking on those things, but this kept coming up and I clicked on it and man, I would say maybe 15 minutes in, I couldn't stop. And it was just, I was like, oh my goodness. And what it did was it prompted me to start digging on my own. And I started digging more and more and more and was able to confirm so many things. And it just resonated so with me, when I was between watching it and some of the other videos that he's did. And, and he's since has passed on, he's passed away. But yeah, I mean, this was quite an interesting video. If you haven't watched it, I tell you, it's something definitely you need to check out. Negro Land, and like I said, again, one of the things he talked about was this right here. That was like one of the key pieces of evidence, if you will, that he presented in this video. And so, but what you're going to find out tonight is this, and let me see what this one says. Okay, yeah, this was exactly where I want to be. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Let's start off with that. And it simply says, and all of you know it, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love Yah, to them who are called according to his purpose. Let me read that again. And we know that all things, everything, work together for the good to them, meaning us, that love Elohim. That's the key. Oh my goodness, that's the key. You got to love him. Not just love him with your mouth. You got to love him with your actions. You got to love him with everything in you. You have to demonstrate your love to him. So if you are someone that demonstrate, not just saying it, but you demonstrate your love for him, I'm going to tell you, everything will work together. That means good situations. That means bad situations. That means good information. And it also means information that's not accurate. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's all going to work out for your good. It says to them who are called according to his purpose. That's the key. And so when I come back here, like when I, with Pastor Darby and his teaching here, what you're going to see in this video as we're going through a lot of things, you're going to see, because we're mainly focusing on this area here, this where it says here on this map, Kingdom of Judah, right? Judah, or Ouidah, Slave Coast, and then it goes on. All right. So that's mainly what we're focusing on. We're not going to focus too much on anything else. I'm gonna mention some other things, but the heart of this particular video is this. This is what we're going to take a second look at. And so anyway, I looked into this and I found some things that were not actually accurate. It wasn't correct. And, it was quite interesting, when I saw this. Now, as what I want to make very clear is this is in no way, shape, or form any kind of rebuke, if you will, to Pastor Darby. He done going on now. Nobody's doing it at all. Remember the scripture that I just read to you, all things work together for the good. So I don't believe for one moment at all that Pastor Darby was in any way, shape, or form trying to purposely mislead anybody. No, not at all. So if anybody walks away from this video, or, we have some people who have very short attention spans, and this is where they will stop the video and say, see, I knew it. You see, you're going in on it. No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not at all. The Bible also says we know in part. That includes me. That includes you. We only know a part of it. But see, even with that part, if we are people, going back to that scripture, that demonstrate our love for him, demonstrate, not just saying that, it doesn't matter if you're getting partial information or even inaccurate information. at the end of the day, guess what? It's going to work out for your good. And I'm going to tell you, he laid the foundation for many of us to dig deeper into this. That's what he did. So for that, I'm eternally grateful for the foundation that he laid, for many of us to get to really not just to stop there, but to continue on. The problem is a lot of our people don't do that. We just simply watch a video and that's it. That's our foundation. And it should never be that, family. Any video that you watch or any book or whatever you watch or read, I should say, that should serve as a entryway, if you will, to your own personal research. And when I say research, I mean really spending a great deal of time asking questions, asking, depending on what country you're studying, maybe talking to the people in that country, reading additional books. Yes, reading books. We love to read books on this end. In fact, like I said, we have a free library that we've made available to everybody, that you can access. And so that you can read on your own, don't just never take just my word for it. Go in and dive into these topics yourself so you can get the full picture. And that's what I believe Pastor Darby was doing. And, with as far as that's concerned. But I just wanted to make that very clear that in no way, shape or form, this should not be seen as some kind of rebuke or shade or anything like that. No, it's not that at all. In fact, I'm very grateful for the foundation that he laid. But now that we're a little bit further along in this, we can take a second look at this information and just kind of make sure that we're getting everything correct. And, 400 years, they have been screwing around with our stuff for so long. We should not settle for anything less, right? So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of turn the page, move right along here a little bit. These are two scriptures I'm going to read to you right quick, just to kind of give you an idea of how, how historical research can be quite interesting, to say the least. So let's start with Acts chapter 8, verse 26 to 27. I'll just read this. And the angel of Yah spoke unto Philip, saying, Arise and go towards the south unto the way that goeth down from Jerusalem unto Gaza, which is desert. And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia. Okay, I want to make that very clear. A man of Ethiopia, an eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all her treasure and had come to Jerusalem to worship. Okay. All right, let's get to this next one here. Now, this is Jeremiah chapter 38, verse 7. Now, when Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs, which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, the king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin, and then it goes on. I'm just highlighting the fact that these two individuals, they were from Ethiopia. Okay. Now, one thing when you begin to look at, when the Bible says Ethiopia, see, a lot of us think of Ethiopia as what we see today, just the country of Ethiopia that has its nice little borders and all of that. No, that's not the Ethiopia that the Bible was referring to at all. In fact, some of you may not be aware, but Ethiopia was actually, all of Africa was considered Ethiopia. It really was. And I have some maps here I want to show you, so you can see for yourself. Okay. And here's a few here. So take a look at this one here. You see where I have this black arrow here. And you see what's called Ethiopia. Now notice the map too. You notice how up near, along the coastline, you notice it's very detailed, right? You see all that. I know, don't even try to read it. Okay. But just trust me, all of these aren't just lines. These are actually names of different towns, things along the coastline here. Okay. So this is, that's very detailed. The coastline is, but once you start getting inland a little bit, you see, it's not really detailed at all. I mean, of course, it just shows like mountains or whatever, but the little towns and villages and things like that, no, it's not labeled at all. It's because at this time, because this map was done back in 1513, You know, the exploration wasn't really as thorough as you'll see in these later maps. But the main thing I want to point out here is that you can see here that where this line here is at the top, this red line right here, that was from that on down was all considered Ethiopia. Okay. Or at one time it was all considered Ethiopia. Here's another map here. Even the ocean. Okay. This map was in 1625. And you notice the ocean is Oceanus Ethiopicus. You notice right here, you see where my black arrow is pointing? Yeah. That was considered the whole Atlantic Ocean was not called the Atlantic Ocean at that time. It was actually called the Ethiopian Ocean. This map, by the way, is a map of Congo, as you can see here. And yeah, see, Congo was well known throughout the old world back in that day. Well known. This is probably why they focused on that first, because it was such a mighty kingdom, you know. So anyway, so I wanted to show you that. This map here is circa 1650. This is Congo as well. And I wasn't even searching for Congo. These maps were just coming up. What I was looking for were maps to show us, you know, that the Atlantic Ocean was considered the Ethiopian Ocean. And you see this once again, Oceanus Ethiopicus. Okay, so you got it there as well. All right, let's take a look here. Now, this is what we would call today South Africa, but check it out. South Africa, what we call today South Africa, was at one time called Ethiopia. So even South Africa was considered Ethiopia. Like I said, all of Africa was considered Ethiopian. Here's another map. Okay, I'm just kind of showing you all this stuff here. It was even one time even above that red line that I showed you in that other map. You see how it's sectioned off here? I'm trying to see if I can get it here. You see these like peach colored lines here, right? Those are borders. Well, on this corner right here to the right where this arrow's pointing, that all was considered Ethiopia. And then all of this down here was called Ethiopia Interior. Okay. So all of these maps, by the way, were not drawn by Africans. This map, by the way, was done back in 1695. This was Europeans. And this was something Africa, the continent of Africa, was something very brand new to them. So you'll see over time how these maps just constantly change over and over again. Here's another one here. Now this one is called the Atlantic Ocean. But here, what was I trying? Oh, this is just a bonus here. Okay, so up here at the top, not the very top, but this yellow here, you see it says Sahara Desert. So you got Sahara Desert. This right here in the middle in green, well, that was called Negro Land. That was called Negro Land, okay? And I'm actually going to do a separate video on Negro Land. Quite interesting stuff there. And then here on this pinkish color here, well, down here you see it's more detailed. And why is this more detailed? And where did this whole Negro Land thing come from? I might be getting ahead of myself, but I'll go ahead and explain it real quick. Negro Land was just basically a lazy way that Europeans labeled this part of the continent. Yeah, it's really that simple. It wasn't that these were a special class of black folks or anything like that. I know some of us have heard that, but not at all. This was just simply a very lazy way of them. And I have some documentation to show you as well because it wasn't, this is an area that they didn't explore. Europeans, when they came to the continent, they didn't just walk willy-nilly. I mean, they really came against some very formidable tribes and people that said, you come up in here, you see what happened. You know what I mean? And so there were areas where they just could not penetrate. And so they just said, we're just going to call that Negro Land. So you'll see that change. You'll see the size of that fluctuate over different maps too, over time. But I just wanted to show you this. But you notice in the pink here, you see there's a lot of detail here because, again, this was easy access for the Europeans, because it was by ship. Okay. Here's another map here. See, here we go. This is exactly what I was talking about. See, all of this at one time, I didn't have a date for this one. All of this at one time was considered Negro land. A good part of it is. And then down here, you see Ethiopia. You see, it's called the Ethiopian Sea on this map to the left. And then down here, you see Lower Ethiopia. And then down here, I told you at one time, that was considered Ethiopia as well. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you that. So when you read these scriptures that mention about a man from Ethiopia or an Ethiopian, it's not talking about what we would call Ethiopia today. In fact, it's really pointing to the continent in of itself, Africa. Another thing you got to keep in mind as well is, again, the scriptures, the Bible that we have. I wish I had an actual Bible I can just kind of wave at you, but the Bible that we have today, what you also have to keep in mind is this is a document, if you will, or, a book that has been thoroughly filtered in and out by our oppressors. So when you're using the Bible for geography and pointing different things out, trust and know, I'm sure they messed around with that as well. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm not saying don't trust the Bible when it comes to that. I'm just saying, just keep in mind, the Bible is in fact a very, very controversial book. And it's one that, our captors, Rome, like going to that series, Rome Never Forgot the Hebrews, has a long history of putting things in and taking things out. So when it comes to things like geography, especially, it can become a bit of a challenge in how you kind of line things up when it comes to geography, not the other stuff, but geography. It can be a bit of a challenge for anybody, and so nobody's perfect on that. So let me just mention this too, as right before I get to this next slide here. One of the things I've noticed, just as I'm been in this walk and, being in the truth, and when it comes to historical study, as it pertains to our people, you have people out there who have established this kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, standard, if you will. The older the book, the more accurate the information is. Because I've encountered times where I've used, like some of the books I am going to be referring to tonight, even though the books may have been written or compiled, let's say 20, 25, 30, maybe 40 years ago. It doesn't mean that they're inaccurate, because a lot of our people, we think that, okay, I got a copy of a book from 1200 and this is the most accurate information, and boom, that's this gold standard. If you can't get your hands on a book that's written back in 1200 or 1300, then none of it is accurate. Then forget about it. Everything else is a moot point. That's not really a proper way of doing research. Research is always an ongoing thing. You understand what I'm saying? We don't assume that the first people got it right. You always want to cross-reference things with multiple sources. You never just want to pick one thing and then, put all your eggs in that one basket, so to speak. But you want to be able to cross-reference it from other voices, from other sources, and that will help you paint a much more accurate picture of what you're researching. And so so don't fall into that trap where you have people who will try to tell you that, this book was from the 1200s and this is the most accurate information. That book was written in in the 2000s. Man, by that time, they done screwed up our history and they done inserted things in there trying to hide. That's a very bad assumption to make if you're really concerned about history, because over time, people get access to more information. You know what I'm saying? So, where it may have started off with that book from the 1200s or the 1300s, over time, people get their hands on other sources and they're able to cross-reference it and they can present something a little bit more accurate. Now, am I saying that there aren't people out there who have nefarious missions, so to speak, to screw things up and to hide things? No, absolutely not. I mean, yes, you have that going on, but we can't blanketly lay that assumption on any book that was written in recent years. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these books do contain a lot of information. And the great thing about these more recent books is that they have plenty of footnotes that point to references that they're pulling from that do come from that era, all through, those different eras. So, so that's one of the things I look for when I'm doing any kind of research, is books that have a very good, a very thorough index or a lot of footnotes, because I just feel like, man, I just have so much I can do with that, and doing my own personal research and digging further just to verify what I'm reading, And so, yeah, I just wanted to plug that in there because, like I said, a lot of times people just are so quick to dismiss and wave off information that's out there, So anyway, let's get back into it, and let's continue. Now we're going to start getting into the meat of this stuff here. Okay, so this is a book that a lot of people will refer to when they're talking about, among other things, like I said, the whole centerpiece of this video that you're watching is really looking at this thing called the Kingdom of Judah. And this book has been one of the books that many of our Hebrew brothers and sisters have pointed to as almost in many cases, a sole source of info. And, and this is a book I do have, and let me kind of move stuff up here. But anyway, let me kind of read to you this section here. Is this it? Okay. This book, first of all, it's coming from a certain perspective that I think that a lot of our people overlook. And I'm going to read this section here, and then I'll explain. Okay. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian, hope I'm saying that right, and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. And then it reads, and then it goes on. He says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all the people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Many of us know that scripture there. Okay, so you see, I have up here who counted, where did this record come from? Of this estimate of over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. Where did that come from? And one of the things, as I just mentioned here, there's no reference to that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, he's making an assertion here, but there's no, and then he's immediately tying it to a scripture. But but we need more information. A good researcher, you're going to ask those questions. Okay, where did this million come from? And, this whole 70 AD thing, where it says that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. Again, that's based on the assumption that Israel is located where we consider where it's believed that Israel is today. What we call Israel today, it's based off of that. You understand what I'm saying? It's based off of this assertion that what we call Israel today, this is where these people fled from, the Mediterranean area, and they went south into into Africa. Okay, deeper into the continent of Africa. And is there truth to that? Yes, most certainly there is. There was a fleeing, if you will, of what we call Jewish people coming into Africa from that region in the Mediterranean, that area there, but also from Spain and Portugal. There were numbers of people Jews that did flood into the continent of Africa, and we're going to get into that as well. Now the assumption is made that these Jews, all of them, look like us. They were dark skinned and they had hair like ours. And you'll find that there is some information that will confirm that description, at least for some of them, however, there's some things that you do need to keep in mind as well. These Jewish people that fled out of Israel, and I'm throwing in there Spain and Portugal, they were practitioners of Judaism. Okay, Judaism. Now that should stop. That should really cause anybody to take a great pause in that. In fact, this author, he really makes no bones about it, and he, really confirms that as throughout the book that, that these were, that these basically were a black version of what we call today Jews. You understand what I'm saying? That's what really where he's getting at, is that these people who fled, the people that we see today, they're just a whitened version of us. That's where he's getting at. You know what I mean? He's not calling them fake or anything. He's saying that they're just a whiter version of us. That's where he's coming from. And then, like I said, again, he also really is emphasizing the fact that these were practitioners of Judaism, which is true, which is very true. These were practitioners of Judaism. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because Judaism, there's numbers of things that they have embraced and believe that, quite frankly, goes contradictory to what we believe. You understand what I'm saying? One of the things of which is when it comes to the Messiah, their concept of or who they believe the Messiah is, and him actually is someone who had already came and was the ultimate sacrifice for our sins and all of that, and died and rose again and all of that. They don't believe that. That's one of the things. Another thing about this group of people is they are the authors of, it came out of Babylon, the Talmud. And so the Talmud, if you take the time and scroll through the Talmud, they have some very interesting things to say about us, black people. They have some very interesting things to say about us, that we're cursed, and among other things. And, we're just, all kinds of evil things when it comes to us and how they portray us. So it doesn't, so again, so when you hear a lot of people who teach this whole historical perspective that we were, and if you follow this platform, I've been talking about this quite often, that we are the descendants of the Sephardics, or these particular Jews. What they oftentimes really don't emphasize, and it needs to be emphasized just over and over again, were that these were practitioners of Judaism. And Judaism, when you get down to it, yes, you do have blacks today, black folks who do embrace Judaism, but I'm telling you, when you go into the Talmud, there's a lot of things in there that say some very awful things about black folks, and just how they just, how they set up their own culture and all that stuff. They really not trying to embrace us like that. You know what I'm saying? Nor should we be trying to embrace them. So that's the one thing, like I said, are there some good things in this book, From Babylon to Timbuktu? Yes, absolutely. Should you read it? Why not? There's a little information there, and it all will help you in your own research. But you have to make sure that as you're reading it, keep this in mind, and so a lot of times, like I said, people use this as a jump off, if you will, that will lead us into, talking about how this was the kingdom of Judah, as in Judah. At least that's how the Bible spells it. And so, I just wanted to emphasize that. Let's go ahead and continue here. Let me see what else I have. And we're going to get into some books here in a moment, but I want to bring this out to you as well. The Lemba tribe, you'll find that these people who call themselves Jews and are not, that they embrace the Lemba tribe, who's a Bantu speaking people. And so the Lemba tribe, when you look into them, they, they do have those roots. Again, this is why it's very interesting to me when I hear other Hebrew ministries. Anytime, if someone brings up Bantu to them, it's like they lose their minds. Like, I don't want to hear any of that Bantu stuff. Well, yeah, we are part of, Bantus do have a lineage a true lineage within Israel, and even these Ashkenazis recognize that. And so what do these Ashkenazis, what have they been doing with this one particular group of people, Bantu people? Well, they've been inundating them with all kinds of stuff, with the star, with all the cap and all that other stuff, all the Ashkenazi, ways of worshiping. They have been flooding these people with all of this stuff. And it's not just the Lemba, but you also have tribes within, go up north, of course, because this is like in the southern regions of Africa. But if you start going up north in Africa, you'll have other tribes that have aligned them, that have the lineage, if you will, that they are true Israel. And these Ashkenazis are right there on their heels, giving them, well, we're going to give you access to these scrolls, and we're going to give you this, and we're going to give you that, and all that stuff. Yeah, they're right there. They're right there. So anyway, so yeah, it's quite interesting here, so we got to make sure that we really are looking at all this stuff very closely. You know what I mean? If anything. Another thing, let me just bring this out here. Now, look at this map here. Now, you see this map here, right? So people have put this out here and they said, this is the map that says Kingdom of Judah or Ouidah, Slave Coast, right? Now, I found this map because I was looking at, I was looking for different older maps of Africa, and this one comes up. Now, look at this. Now, that basically what I just showed you is this map. But as you can see in the big red letters, this is a fake. You see what these people did? Someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to Photoshop. They wrote in there tribe of Judah, and then they also put in there Simeon, and then they put in this other stuff here. These are fakes. And so people, this is the things that I'm trying to tell you. Well, it's a fake, but you got to be careful because there's some things in here that's true in his map, and there's some things that are not. And so when it says tribe of Judah, or like this Simeon, like I'm looking at that right now, that's someone wrote that in. But this tribe of Judah, for example, one can easily assume that it's talking about Judah, as in Judah in the Bible. It's not the case at all. And that's what we're going to learn tonight, or in this video here, as soon as I get my book up here. Let me see what I have here. Okay, yeah. Let me show you this next one. Okay, so here's the map that we've all seen right here. And I put here a question. All right, so this is Ouidah, and they say, oh, this is the tribe of Judah. This is where the tribe of Judah resides. Let me ask you something. And what we've been taught up to this point is that this is comprised of people who fled out of Israel, or what they call Israel, and also people who fled out of Spain and Portugal, and they all somehow congregated here, and they called it the Kingdom of Judah. Now, let me ask you a question. So if this was comprised of people who were fleeing for their lives, why would you call it that? So this is the question I put up here. I said, so if you were trying to hide from your enemy, I meant to say if you're trying to hide from your enemy, I got to fix that. Not your enemy. Would you secure a whole country and name it after yourself? Like, would you have like a big old sign there, a secret hideout? This is the Kingdom of Judah. Would you do that? Would anybody, do something like that? So something like that doesn't even add up. That doesn't make sense. You understand what I'm saying? And so what we're going to get into now is I'm going to show you, we're going to get into several books here, and I'm going to show you that, no, this is not Judah as what we have been taught to believe. It's not Judah as in Judah in the Bible. Not at all. Okay. So give me a moment here. I'm going to switch things around here, and then I'm going to bring up some things here so you can see for yourself. Okay. In fact, it was far from it. It was definitely not. It was definitely not Judah like that. No, not at all. Let me see. Let me first bring this book up here. Nope, not that one. I think it's this one. There we go. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this book here. And this is Ouidah. Ouidah. Notice the spelling here. We're going to talk about that in a moment. The social history of a West African slaving port, 1727 to 1892. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to scroll here because I got a lot of bookmarks here. Let me see if I can find the first one I want to read to you. I think this is the one here. Oh, yeah. I think actually this is it here. Hopefully this is it. I'll click on that. Okay. So origins, we're going to go to the origins section. All right. So let me read this. So family, if I get to mispronounce the names, it's not intentional. Y'all been riding with me enough. You know, I'm not the greatest when it comes to pronunciation with some of these names, but I do the best I can. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and read this section here. It says, although Ouidah is the spelling of the town's name current nowadays, it occurs in European sources between the 17th and 19th centuries in various other forms in English. Most commonly, Ouidah, or spelled with a Whydah. In Dutch, Fida, Fida. In French, Juda, Juda. And in Portuguese, Ajuda. All these are attempts to render an indigenous name that would be more correctly written by modern conventions as Ouidah. It's as in Hueda, or in a dialect, keep it going here, variant of Peda, Peda. Strictly and originally, Ouidah was not the name of the town nowadays called Ouidah, but rather of the kingdom to which it belonged in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, whose capital was Savi, 11 kilometers further north. The people of Ouidah, as in Hueda, belong to the same linguistic group as the Fon of Dahomey. Although historically distinct from them, this language family is nowadays generally called by scholars Gebi, but formerly commonly Iwi or Adja. And in French, the colonial usage was de Jedi. In contemporary sources, the name Ouidah, which was Hue, may have been noted first by Spanish missionaries visiting the kingdom of Ouidah to the northeast in 1660, who recorded it apparently in the form Jura, or Jura, or Iura. More certainly, it enters the historical record in 1671 as Juda. So it started off with Jura, Jura, or in some cases it was written as Iura, and then later on, then they wrote it as Juda. When the French first established a trading factory there in 1727, the Ouidah Kingdom, Hueda Kingdom, was conquered by the inland kingdom of Dahomey. As a political unit, it thereafter survived only in the form of a minor successor state formed by refugees from the Dahomeyan conquest on the western shore of Lake, Aheme or Hen, about 20 kilometers west of Ouidah. This relocated kingdom being distinguished by Ouidah Henji, or Ouidah on Lake Hen. However, the name Ouidah, in its various European misspellings, continued to be applied to the coastal town now subject to Dahomey. In the present work, to avoid confusion, the form Ouidah, Hueda, is used only to refer to the pre-1727 kingdom, and after 1727 to the successor kingdom in exile established to the west, while the modern form of Ouidah, which Ouidah, is used of the town. So I know there was a mouthful there, but basically, as you can see, it didn't start off as Judah. It really started off as Jura, Jura, and in some cases it was written as Iura. Okay, and again, with these crazy Europeans, who couldn't spell, or couldn't write. Have you ever taken the time and write and try to read some of these old maps in their writing? I mean, some of their writing was atrocious. I mean, it was really not good at all. I mean, they try to get all fancy and stuff, but I'm like, is this an I? Is this what the heck is this? Well, apparently they had the same problem back then. So that's why it was the way it was written. It was oftentimes misspelled and all of that stuff. So you see that. Well, I have some other sources too that will confirm that. But anyway, let me see if I want to, because I have another one here. Let me see if I can. Give me just a moment, family. Give me just a moment. Because I want to stay on this same topic here, what we're talking about, pronunciation of the actual word. Let me see before I move on. I had another. I think that's it. I may come across it as we're chatting here, but I'll just move on to this next book here. Give me just a moment here. Is this the same one? Sorry, y'all. Let me just pull this back up here because there's some other nuggets in this book I want to take a look at. Okay, so let's see. So that's the pronunciation, and somewhere we'll come across, and as I'm doing this video, we're going to come across another source that's going to say pretty much the same thing there. Let me see what else I have here in this that I highlighted here. We're going to learn a little bit about Ouidah. Okay, we're going to learn a little bit about. So this is just some of the introduction of the book here. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of this. Okay. All right. So in the pre-colonial period, it had belonged to successively two African states. First, the kingdom of Ouidah, and they're talking about Ouidah, Ouidah, whence the name Ouidah, and from 1727, that of Dahomey, from which the French colony took its name. And the first language of the inhabitants today remains Fon, the language of Dahomey, with French inherited from the colonial period as the superimposed official language of the administration and education. Let me skip down. In the pre-colonial period, let me see here. However, Ouidah was the principal commercial center in the region and the second town of the Dahomey kingdom, exceeded in size only by the capital of Abomey, 100 kilometers inland. In particular, it served as a major outlet for the export of slaves for the transatlantic trade. Okay, so Ouidah is the town. Okay, so now they're talking about the town of Ouidah, okay, which is still, I believe, still in existence today. The section of the African coast on which Ouidah is situated is in geographical terms of the Bight or Gulf of Benin, was known to Europeans between the 17th and 19th centuries as the Slave Coast. From its prominence as a source of supply for the Atlantic slave trade, and within this region, Ouidah was by far the most important port of embarkation for slaves, far overshadowing its nearest rival, Lagos, 150 kilometers to the east, in modern Nigeria. Ouidah was a leading slave port for almost 2 centuries, from the 1670s to the 1860s. During this period, the Bight of Benin was thought to have accounted for about 22% of all slaves exported to the Americas, and Ouidah for around 51% of the exports from the Bight. Given the current consensual estimate of between 10 and 11 million slaves exported from Africa in this period, this suggests that Ouidah supplied, taking a minute here, man, come on, Dwayne. well over 1 million slaves, making it the second most important point of embarkation of slaves in the whole of Africa, behind only Luanda in Angola. So Angola at that time was, in fact, pushing out the most slaves. Okay, that's where a lot of us came out of, and then we're gonna talk. And so, just to kind of so you can understand what was going on here. So Ouidah was a major point of, and I'm using the word port lightly. There's something we're going to read here in a little bit. It's going to talk about, initially it wasn't an actual port because they couldn't really get to the coastland because it was the way the coast was set up. You know, it was hard for ships to go there. So they actually had to take small boats to get to the coastland. And so anyway, Ouidah was a major point where slaves were sold. What they were basically doing, and like I said, as we're reading through some of these different sources here, Ouidah was going deep into the inland part of Africa and pulling these people out, stealing them. And then they were just selling them. So they were a major point of where these slaves were being sold. They would reach all the way deep into Africa, and they would do that long march all the way to their coastline and sell them. Okay, so now just so you can get an understanding, it was a major point. Okay, this prominence in Ouidah in the Atlantic slave trade is reflected in the occurrence of versions of its name in various contexts in the African diaspora in the Americas. For example, there is a village called Ouidah in Jamaica, originally a sugar plantation, presumably so named through being settled with slaves imported from Ouidah. In Haiti, one of the principal deities of the Afro-American voodoo, we pronounce it voodoo religion, the goddess Ezili. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that of Ouidah in Dahomey. Although one modern account has argued that Ezili is a purely Haitian creation without African ascendants. Let's see, there is in fact in Ouidah to the present day a shrine of Ezili, a female river spirit, who is evidently the prototype of the Haitian goddess. The name of the town was also commemorated in that of a ship of the pirate San Bellamy, the Ouidah, wrecked off of Cape Cod in what is now the USA in 1717, but located and excavated by marine archaeologists to become the subject of a museum expedition in the 1990s. This ship, having been originally prior to its capture and appropriation by pirates, engaged in the slave trade and named after the West African town. Ouidah's prominence in European commerce is also reflected in the application of the name Ouidah bird to a genus of the weaver bird that is in fact common throughout tropical Africa, but became familiar to the wider world through Ouidah. In English usage, the name was commonly corrupted into widow bird, whence rather than directly from the name Ouidah, its zoological name, Vidua, under which form it was celebrated in a poem by Shelby. So as you can see, this name Ouidah, I mean, they have seriously jumped all over the scales with this. Let me go to something here. Just a moment. Where am I? Because they mentioned this ship here. I'll just show you real quick because I took some screenshots of that as well, so you can see for yourself what they're talking about here. Okay, so yeah, so this is actually it's called the Ouidah Pirate Museum, and it's located in Cape Cod. And you can go and see a replica of this ship. And this was a slave ship called Ouidah, because apparently they were doing that much business in how they were bringing out these slaves. And so what you're looking at are different screenshots of this, of this ship. This was in fact a real slave ship that was doing a ton of business when it came to Ouidah, okay, the kingdom of Ouidah. All right, so let me go back to, was it here? Okay, I guess, yeah, that's where we were. All right, so let me see what I have. Yeah. Okay, I read that. Okay, let me see what else I have. I'll just read this stuff here too. Although proponents of Atlantic history have tended to concentrate on the links between Europe and the Americas, it needs to be recognized that African societies were also active participants in the making of the Atlantic world. If there was an Atlantic community, the African coastal towns, which served as an embarkation points for the transatlantic slave trade, were part of it. Their commercial and ruling elites being involved in political, social, and cultural networks, as well as purely business linkages which span the ocean. We're going to talk more about that too. Let me continue here. Okay, that was just a bookmark here. Okay, yeah, I think this is the other source that I wanted to point to. Okay, yeah, I think this is the other source that I was mentioning earlier. Okay, so again, I'm going to try my best with these words, okay? Note on spelling. The spelling of local words and names in this study presents considerable difficulty. The Fon language can be transcribed into a variety of ways. Most accurately, a phonetic script is employed, which includes some letters additional to or with different values from the standard Latin alphabet. This script is not widely used in writing. However, Fon words and names being more commonly spelled in the standard Latin alphabet, thereby losing some of the distinctions made in the phonetic script. Very often, moreover, spelling follows French conventions, offering, for example, OU for U, DJ for J, C for K. As an illustrative example, the name of the kingdom from which that of the town of Ouidah is derived may be written as Ouidah, with the X, right? Ouidah. In the phonetic script, Ouidah in the Latin alphabet, or Ouidah in the French spelling. The conventions adopted in this work are a compromise among the conflicting demands of accuracy, consistency, and recognizability. For ordinary Fon words, titles, and common personal names, and for names of pre-colonial kingdoms and ethnic groups, the quasi-phonetic transcription in the standard Latin alphabet is generally employed, as, for example, Ouidah for the names of the towns and of families that still exist in Ouidah. However, it seemed proper to use the forms that are currently in use, which are generally in the French form. For example, the names of two villages in the south of Ouidah are given as, I'm going to try my best, Zongbadiji. And it's they give two examples here. I'm gonna try it, but let me see if I can make this bigger for y'all. Let me see if this thing will let me make it bigger so you can see it for yourself here. Hold on for a second here. Oh, they won't make it. How they not gonna let me? Hold on. Okay, well, you just have to squeeze it in. I don't know why this thing won't let me make it bigger. Hold on. That's a bummer. Okay, let me see. Anyway, which is okay. Let me see. I'm gonna skip down here. They give examples here. Okay, I'm gonna help you out here. And those are three of the major merchant families of the town of ADJ, Adjovi, and Koja. And I'm not gonna say. Okay. I'm going to skip here. Spelling conventions were, of course, not standardized until recently, so that early written sources employ spellings that are inconsistent with each other, as well as being inaccurate by modern standards. In general, such deviant forms are employed in this work only in direct quotations from sources. Otherwise, modern spellings are preferred. In a few cases, however, corrupt forms, early forms of local toponyms have become sanctioned by use and remain in general use today. Okay, and it goes on. So basically, again, this is just what I was referring to earlier, that, again, the spelling is kind of going to be all over the place as it relates to Ouidah, right? Then you had Ouidah, then you had Juda, okay? So it's nowhere, just in looking at the name, I think we've kind of well established this now, that just the name in of itself does not come from Judah, okay? Has nothing to do with Judah at all. Judah as in the Bible, okay? Has nothing to do with that. That's just in the name itself, but wait, there's a whole lot more, okay? Because we have to look at other things as well, just to really make sure that we're proving this point. Okay, so let me take a look here and see what else I have here. I'm gonna leave it on this screen here, and I'm gonna look at my other source here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we'll look at this here. Okay, I think this will be another thing we can look at. Okay, so what you're looking at, this is it's called the Historical Dictionary of Benin. The Historical Dictionary of Benin. And this is a book that's pretty pricey. Through my sources, I was able to find it, but anyway, but yeah, it's an older book. And, but again, it's called the Historical Dictionary of Benin. And so I'm just going to show you some parts here where, again, we're looking at the name, but we're also going to learn that it's not just the name. The place was actually named after a people. All right. So here we go. Possibly the only indigenous coastal ethnic group at the time of Aja migrations from the Aja Tado that resulted in the rise of the Ouidah, Alada, and later the Dahomey and Porto Novo kingdoms. An alternate historical reconstruction has the Azo as early as Aja branch, also from Aja Tado, largely assimilated into the Fan and Aja population. The Aizo, I'm going to say Aizo, currently number around 130,000, scattered in small villages around Ouidah. Frequently counted with the Aizo are the closely related Ouidah, known also as Peda, and they make up of 15,000 people, many of whom are fishermen along Lake Aheme. So the Ouidah is an actual people. It's not just a name, it's the name of a people. Okay. Let me see. I'm skipping here. Hold on. All right, I'll go here. Give me just a moment here. Okay, so that was, okay, let me go back one. Okay, so now they're talking about, because see, then you had, you're talking about Ouidah and Dahomey. They were both Fan, but they were, they were warring against one another. Towards that end, ritual human sacrifices were offered, the necessity for which impelled Dahomey into ceaseless slave hunting wars with its neighbors. The veneration of deceased chiefs and human sacrifices were not only a unique Dahomean custom. A cult of the royal dead existed in both Ouidah and Alada, as did human sacrifices at royal funerals. In Dahomey, however, the magnitude of these were much greater, and they became an annual practice, symbolizing also the dynastic continuity, veneration of former kings, and Dahomean prowess. Okay, so Ouidah, they were known for this kind of cultish activity. One of the things they were known for doing. Okay, and you're going to see as we go on that this still has not only continued to this day, but it's also spilled over into the diaspora. Okay. And so, but Ouidah, which later became Benin, right? You're going to see what happened there. Anyway, let me continue here. Let's see. I'll just read. This is a little extra points here. At Ouidah, especially when the slave port was part of Ouidah kingdom, both gold dust and cowrie shells were acceptable as trade. Because see, initially when the Portuguese came, one of the things we're going to find out too, when they initially came to that region, they weren't really interested in slaves. Something very interesting I came across that stuck out to me, and that just had left me like, let's go on here. Let me see what else I have. Okay. Now, this is in Ouidah. Okay. Deity native to the pre-colonial kingdom of Ouidah. Let's see. With all its main temple in the commercial capital and port of Ouidah. Now, Ouidah is the kingdom. Ouidah is the name of the town, just in case you're getting confused there. What was this? What was this called? The cult of the great serpent. Does that sound like Judah to you? All right, let's go on. Its local name is Dangbi, with Ouidah specifically concentrated to its worship. Much of the early proselytizing effort of the Portuguese and French priests in Ouidah was hampered by the overwhelming attachment of the population in this specific area to the cult, and foreign priests were on several occasions chased out of town, their missions burned. The main temple of the cult, an prepossessing complex, stands exactly across the modern cathedral, and many worshipers cross from one site to the other on Sunday. The temple and its huge defanged pythons is one of the Benin's great tourist attractions. The cult was originally alien to the fawn of the homie, but spread, and it goes on. I'm gonna get to that part in a moment. But notice here, I want to go back here. The main temple of the cult, an prepossessing complex, stand exactly across the modern cathedral, and many worshipers cross from one side to the other. What are they talking about? You had the church. They were there, but the church didn't have too much power in that region. Because who was in charge there? It was this whole thing, which we're going to find out. It actually was the foundation of voodoo. Okay. And so this country to this day, like I said, now it's called Benin. It's considered like the headquarters of voodoo. Okay. But so the church in that region at that time, basically they came to an arrangement with the voodoo priest. And it was basically, you better step off. You can be here, but make sure you across the street. And so when you look at voodoo today, you'll see that there is a blending of the teachings of the Catholic Church, Christianity, and what came out of here. It's quite interesting. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue. Let me see if I had something else here. The cult was originally alien to the fawn of the homie, but spread among them slowly, with python temples to be found today along the main road to Ouidah and Abomey. All right. So yeah, I'm actually going to show you some videos of this. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so the Ouidah, which going back to that map, the kingdom of Ouidah, it's referring to this people called Ouidah. Okay. Small ethnic group, also known as Peda, closely related to the Azo, indeed sometimes confused with them, and engaged in fishing along the coastal lagoons and Lake Ahame. The Ouidah were the founding group of the Kingdom of Ouidah. Currently, they number around 18,000. I'll just read this part here. The Kingdom of Ouidah. Okay. Small pre-colonial kingdom founded by the Ouidah, arriving along the coastal lagoons from Tado in the middle of the 16th century, becoming in essence the first of the Ouidah states in the area. Its political capital was Savi, called Xavier by French traders. Though the Ouidah kingdom became renowned for its seaport, Ouidah or Juda to the early traders along the coast, see that, was concentrated to Dogby, see the cult of the great serpent. So again, this was not Judah. Okay, Judah fell in some sin, but and that's what caused us to be separated, right? To go into captivity and all that. But the cult of the great serpent, I don't think so. I don't think so, because you'll see even to this day, it's not just that, but these people were very key and instrumental in selling us into slavery. Where do you see in scripture where Judah sold itself and sold its own people into slavery? Where do you see that? You don't. Okay, so these were not our people to do this. Let me go back here. Let me see. Though the Ouidah kingdom became renowned for its seaport, Ouidah or Judah to the early traders along that coast were concentrated to Dogby, see cult of the great serpent, intermittently tributary to the Ouidah kingdom. Ouidah was the main intermediary between the European slave dealers along the coast and the African slave caravans arriving from the north, without any resources except fresh food for the traders, but controlling the middleman function. Ouidah became the greatest slave port of the coast in the 17th century. In the 18th century, Ouidah fell to Dahomey and lost his preeminent position. Its last king, Huffon, ascended the throne in 1708 at age 13 and died in exile in 1733. All right, and then it goes on talking about the kings of Ouidah and all of that. Okay, so again, now we're this picture is starting to get filled in a little bit more. Okay, now we're starting to learn a little bit more about these people. And so far, you're starting to see this picture's looking a little bit different from what we have been told, that this was the kingdom of Judah, and, we were just sitting there chilling, and all of a sudden these mean old Europeans came and just snatched us out. No, that's not at all. If these people were not our people, these people, in fact, were people who that's really what their bread and butter, came from, was selling slaves, selling us. That's what they were dedicated themselves to Satan, basically, the serpent gods. All right. So, yeah, so that's from that writing there. Let me see. That was from, hold on, what are you guys looking at? Okay, let me see. We were just looking at this book. Hold on, let me see. Okay, yeah, that was from the Historical Dictionary of Benin. Okay, so that's what was from that. Okay, let me see. What did I have for this here? Okay, so now we're going to continue to learn. Now, like I said, again, this is a very detailed. This is why I told you it took me a lot of time to go through all this information, and we're just really scratching the surface here. Okay, so this is from the book here, Slave Traders by Invitation, West Africa's Slave Coast in the Pre-Colonial Era, and that's the book there. So you can look that book up on your own, and hopefully you can find that. Okay, so just to give you an idea, okay, so this is right here. It's part of the kingdom of Ouidah, what you're looking at. And so I'm just going to show you this map here so you can see some of these things here so you can get a general idea of how it looked in those days. So the Bight of Benin, which is also it's another way of saying the Gulf of Benin. And then you see the swampland here. This is what I was talking about. Ships would try to come here and it was a little bit difficult. Okay. So Ouidah, when you see that, Ouidah was that was the main power town where you had a lot of slaves that were being sold from this town here. All right. And Ouidah is named the kingdom of Ouidah. This is just kind of you had the kingdom of Ouidah and then you had a town called Ouidah. All right. And Savi, which is north, or however you want to see this. This is, I guess, based on how you're looking at this, it's not north. It would actually be, it's north on this map. but I guess that would be, it's going inland. Well, we'll just say north. All right. Savi was another town where they had a lot of slave activity and stuff going on there. So that just gives you an idea of what it kind of looked like there. Okay, so let me see if I highlight. Okay, let's get to this page here. Justly Watson, who went ashore on the beach south of Ouidah on 20 December 1755. The landing is the worst I ever saw, and I believe one of the worst in the whole world. See, this is what I was talking about. Yet we arrived in the best season. I was informed sometimes ships have been 4 or 5 weeks before anybody could get ashore. Dang. And any boat go off to them. There is a bar before the shore in which the sea breaks prodigiously, and the canoes frequently overset in what is called good weather. After one gets ashore there and several rivers to pass over, which makes it very tiresome and dangerous. To reach the town of Ouidah, Watson's destination, some 4 kilometers inland. Watson was certainly not exaggerating, quite the contrary. In fact, he noticed that only one bar, whereas there were actually 2 moving underwater sandbars, which ran parallel to the coast, implying that the surf broke 3 times during most seasons, the 3rd time over the shoreline itself. It has been described by the other visitors as a wall of water, which with waves reaching truly impressive heights altogether, not Burfrit of majesty. It has also been described as a dangerous belt of death, only owing to the frequent capsizing of canoes, so forth and so on. I don't have to read all of that, but you get a kind of a general idea of what they were dealing with when they were going to that coastline. Okay, I just want you to kind of get a visual there. Let's skip down here. Actually, what we have described above what we have described above is the situation that came to prevail about 1727 and the famous but long drawn out Dahomean conquest of the coast. In fact, the beginning of a long chaotic period, as we shall see. However, before 1727, the slaves were gathered together, not at Ouidah, but at Savi. Remember, I just showed you there. All right. Some 9 kilometers further north, about 16 to 17 kilometers from the ships, and driven from thence down to the shore and to the ships. Savi was the palatial capital of the pre-1727 and rather Lilliputian Polti kingdom of Ouidah. Okay. Well, this is kind of like filling in some blanks, because my goal is I want people just to get the full picture of what this place actually was. Okay. All right. Since the picture drawn above refers primarily to the region of Ouidah, we need to add a few more qualifications. The first is that in order to avoid any misunderstanding, the slave trade did not get underway first at Ouidah, but some 30 kilometers further east at Afra in the kingdom of Alda. However, Ouidah in the kingdom of Ouidah took over very quickly as the leading emporium. So it actually started in the town called Afra, okay, in Ouidah. And then from there, and that was in the kingdom of Alda. And then Ouidah, they just said, oh, no. We going to take this joint. We going to take this thing. And so Ouidah came and just took over. All right. And that's how they were just so hungry for this game. They saw this thing. It was like selling weave hair. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was a new game in town. All right, let's continue here. According to the local traditions from Ouidah, those of Afra have disappeared along with the town itself. The first locals who spotted the Portuguese and managed to persuade and or lure them to venture ashore were later elevated to the dignity of divinities. Sorry, they are so worshipped to the present. So to the present, the first people who saw these Portuguese coming, They were waving them down. You'll see, and I think I have another account of this. They were waving them down, talking about, come in, we got some Negroes here that you can buy. To this day, they are still worshiped. These individuals that were doing it, they're worshiped for doing that, for selling us. And they were so elevated because they were considered as benefactors to society. The trouble was, however, that the locals had nothing to offer but slaves, and the Portuguese at the early stage were not particularly interested. It was gold, not slaves, that originally attracted the Europeans to the coast of Guinea. According to one version, Capate, the one who spotted the Portuguese, became the divinity of shipwrecks. Now, pay attention to this. This is how these people, this thing we call the kingdom of Judah, right? We say this was Judah. No, this wasn't Judah. Listen how they were so determined to sell us into slavery. Check this out. According to one version, Capate, the one who spotted the Portuguese, became the divinity of shipwrecks. That is, the divinity to which one offered sacrifices to make ships run aground. So this man of the kingdom of Ouidah, he was so desperate to call these ships, these Portuguese ships, to come on in. He would offer sacrifices, according to this account. He would offer sacrifices to the gods or whatever that he was worshiping so that these ships would run aground and they would be basically driven in to the kingdom of Ouidah so that they can buy us. Indeed, according to the custom of the coast, the locals had the right to loot any ship wrecked on the beach, a custom not unknown elsewhere, including parts of Western Europe. That happened with some frequency in the following centuries. It is tempting to argue that the Capate story testifies to the difficulties of establishing contact, and more generally to the dangers of the Europeans were confronted with in these waters. All right, so no. Okay, let me see what else I have here. Let's go on to the next. See if I had anything else highlighted in this. Okay, here we go. On the African side, furthermore, or rather, that part of the African side that we know about, there is no hint of any. Now, listen to this part here. This is also a very important part I want you to get. I'll read it again. On the African side, furthermore, or rather, that part of the African side that we know about, there is no hint of anything even remotely resembling remorse or moral scruples, not to mention an abolitionist movement, and certainly not in Ouidah. Consider Robin Law's assertion, based on his extensive field work in the area, that there was, until very recent, this was written in 2004, a local consensus that the slave trade was a good thing for Ouidah. He added that he did not detect any feeling of shame anywhere. Law, who is not taken to verbal excess, notes also that references to the slave trade in the remembered praise names of prominent traders are sometimes, by the standard of modern susceptibilities, alarmingly callous. In fact, as we intend to demonstrate later, the treatment of the slaves destined for America before they ended up in the custody of the Europeans demonstrates that their fate was of no concern to the local population. If one asks why, the answer may perhaps be something to the effect that a slave was an other, quote unquote, other, someone without kin relations in this kinship type society, and as such no longer considered to be a genuine human being in the sense of not belonging to any human community. This is from the people of Ouidah. This is how they saw us. They saw us. They didn't see us. So this whole thing about we weren't considered human, talking about us now, us who have been sent out by ships. That didn't start with white people. That didn't come from white people. That came from the people of Ouidah. They started that. They were the first ones to say that we were less than human. Now you think on that for a second. And see, I wanted to really take my time doing this because this is going to mess up some people's money. Because you got quite a few people out here who have been putting out books and videos and all kinds of stuff saying that these were our people. But you got to cross-reference all this stuff, family. You got to. You know what I mean? You got to dig deeper. These were not our people at all. They were not. And we're just, like I said, again, I have some more stuff I'm showing you. Okay. But this is, that's from there. I think that's all in that book here. Let me switch to this next one here. Yeah, this is another one. I'll get to this one now. This one is, I just have to remember my page. Okay, so let me see. The name of this book is The Portuguese in West Africa from the year 1415 to 1617. I'm trying to see if I can find that's page 90. Excuse me. So you can see the cover. Okay, yeah, there's the book, the cover. The Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1617, a document of history. Okay, so now let me go on down here and get to page 97. And again, see, they give you all the maps here and all of that too. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's check out this section here. Christianity and the Oubas of Benin. Now, this is a letter that was written back in 1471. No. Sorry. It was written back in 1516. Sorry, this is a letter written back in 1516. Letter to Duarte Pires to Dom Manuel I in Benin, October the 20th, 1516. And this is what he says here. Okay, and this is the translation of it. The writer of this letter, Duarte Pires, and his companion, João Sobrinho, were Portuguese from Principe, who had opened up trading relations with Benin, which may have included military assistance for the Oba of Benin in his wars. The King of Portugal was hoping to benefit by their presence to bring about the conversion of the Oba and the establishment of a close alliance with the kind that was proving so profitable for the Portuguese crown in the Congo kingdom. It's clear. So they were like, man, we want to duplicate what we started in the Congo. We want to set up something like that here in this region. Okay. It is clear that the Oba gave encouragement to the Portuguese in order to obtain help from them, although no mass conversion ever took place. The Obas remained attached to their traditional religions, practices, and to compound this stubbornness in the eyes of the Portuguese, were ready to trade with French interlopers. They also forbade the export of male slaves, thereby lessening Portugal's interest in the region. The commerce of Benin never became a Portuguese royal monopoly and was largely carried on by traders from São Tomé and Principe, whose interests frequently clashed with those of the crown in West Africa. So they didn't, unlike Congo, they said, no, we gonna stand on what we stand on our religion. And I told you what their religion was. The presence of Portuguese in Benin is vividly portrayed by the Benin bronze casters, who used their distinctive features, dress, and arms of the Portuguese as a favorite motif in their work. However, the contrast between the experience of the Portuguese in Benin and their experience in Congo is especially noteworthy and shows how important the adoption of the Christian cult in the Congo was to the growth of a Creole culture and integration of the Congolese into the burgeoning Atlantic economy. There's a lot there, man. Sire, you should know that Pero Barroso gave me a letter from your highness, and I rejoice that your highness should remember such a poor man as I. Now I will give your highness an account of the matter contained in the letter you sent me. Sire, what you say about my being in great favor with the king of Benin is certainly true, because the king of Benin favors anyone who speaks well of your highness and very much desires to be your friend. He never speaks of anything else but matters which concern you and our Lord. And in this, he and all his nobles and people take the greatest pleasure, and you will soon know of this and the good that the king of Benin does to us for love of your highness. As a result, he treats us very honorably and places us to eat at the table together with his son. Nothing in his palace is hidden from us, but all the doors are open. So this is the king of Benin, and that's Ouidah and Dahomey and all. That's all in them. They basically are like talking to the people, this Portuguese delegation as equals. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's continue. Sire, when the priest arrived at Benin, the pleasure of the king of Benin and his people was such that I cannot describe to you. At once he sent for them, and they were with him during the war for a whole year. We and his fathers both reminded him of your highness's embassy, and he replied that he was very happy with it. But because of the war, he couldn't do nothing until he returned to Benin, because he had to have time to consider such a great mystery as this. As soon as he was once again in Benin, he would carry out what he had promised your highness, and he would do what would give great pleasure to you and all your kingdom. All right, almost finished here with this little excerpt here. So at the end of a year, in the month of August, the king allowed his son and some of his greatest nobles in the kingdom to become Christians. He ordered a church to be built in Benin, and they were immediately baptized. They are being taught to read, and your highness will know that they are learning very well. And sire, the king of Benin expects to end the war this summer, when we will go to Benin, and I will give an account to your highness of everything that occurs. Sire, I, Duarte Pierres, and João Sabrinho, an inhabitant of the island of Principe, and Giorgio Lourenco, a black man who was the servant of Francesco Lourenco, are all three at your highness's service, and we have conveyed your highness thoughts to the king of Benin and have told him what a great lord your highness is, and with great lord you can make him. Written during the war of 10 October 1516. So this church that they're talking about, he said, yeah, you can establish a church there. Do you remember earlier I was saying there's a church that's there in Benin, in today's Benin, and they were talking about how the people would leave that snake temple and they go right to church, or better yet, it was the other way around, I think. They would leave the church and go there, or, you know, and so it's still there, but you go to Benin today, I'm gonna tell you right now, Christianity ain't the national language. You know what I mean? That was just them trying to come to an agreement so that they can come to this agreement so they can sell all these slaves they were getting from the inland part of Africa. All right. Anyway, let's see here. Let me try to move on here. As you can see, there's a whole lot here. Anyway, so I'm done with that book here. Okay. Now this one has a lot in it. I may not read as much as I was originally planning on reading, but this will give you a little bit more idea. This is from the Journal of African History, and it's called the Dahomean middleman system. And this is from 1727 to 1818. And what this will give you is a little more insight as to how these people operated within Ouidah. It's saying Dahomean, but remember now, the Dahomeans, after a while, they took over. They defeated Ouidah, and it just kind of became one kingdom, because these were the Fon people. Anyway, during the first quarter of the 18th century, European merchants brought more slaves into the western section of the Bight of Benin than on any other part of the West African coast. The merchants purchased most of their slaves in either Savi, the inland capital of a tiny Aja state called Ouidah, or in Yakin, a port which belonged to the neighboring and rather larger Aja state of Alda. Okay, the Savi and Yakin markets seldom flourished at the same time. When one was well stocked, the other usually empty. From 1720 until 1727, trading was concentrated in Savi. In the 1720s, the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the French, and the English all maintained factories in Savi. The slaves they brought there came from Aja Interior, from Yorubaland, and even from Hausaland. Some were brought to Savi by merchants from the interior, others by local Ouidah dealers who had traveled inland collecting them. The European merchants in Savi paid customs duties, were probably obliged to buy the king of Ouidah's slaves before any others, and may have had to pay a slightly higher than average price for royal slaves. Beyond this, they were subject to very few restrictions. They not only came and went as they pleased, but they traded regularly with both the commoner Ouidah merchants and inland slave suppliers. They were even able to play a very active part in Ouidah politics. Although Ouidah's rulers tried to limit their freedom of action, these efforts met with very little success. In 1727, Savi was overrun by the Dahomeans, an Aja people whose home territory lay in the interior in the Abomey area, to the north of both Alda and the Lemba Marsh. Little is known about the Dahomean history before 1727. Oral traditions collected in the 19th and 20th century suggest that the Dahomean kingdom was founded in the second quarter of the 17th century by a group of royal immigrants from Alda. Some 18th century European sources say that Dahomey was the beginning. Let's see, that's a map. Merely the name of a gang of mercenaries or bandits. The major 19th century accounts of the kingdom state that Dahomey was originally a slave raiding community. Whether its origins or the various versions are by no means incompatible, the new state was undoubtedly an aggressive one. During the course of the 17th century, the Dahomeans quarreled with the enslaved, subdued, or drove away most of the Abomey region's original inhabitants. And they say, let's see what else they got here, because I don't think I need to read any more else, because I think I pretty much have made the case here that, let me see. Despite the Dahomeans' ruthless pursuit of their middleman goals, the new system did not initially operate as intended. The first reason for this was that the Dahomeans were in practice unable to keep the forts totally isolated. In 1727, many of the Ouidah notables had fled up to the Popos, a group of islands just off the coast a few miles west of the Grihu. The exiles made these islands a base from which to attack the Dahomeans taking slaves to Grihu. And then it goes on. Okay, so anyway, I can read. There's a whole lot more on here, but just in short, again, what this document is making it plain to us that, again, that these Ouidans, that with the Dahomeans who later took over, they were all middlemen. So when these the Portuguese, when they would come to this neck of the woods, so to speak, these are the people that they dealt with, because in terms of buying these slaves, They were the ones that went into the interior, further inside of Africa, the continent of Africa, and they would grab whoever they can get, and they sold us. You understand what I'm saying? And so, so I just wanted to highlight that as well, just as another layer of evidence to show that, again, these people were not our people. Okay, just so that that's very clear. Okay, so as I'm sweating here, let me see. I think that's all the main, like, in terms of literature that I wanted to point to. Now what I want to do is there's a few videos that I want to point to. We're going to take a look at. Let me make sure that they're queued up, and we're going to look at these short videos. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So now this first video is, you guys may have seen this guy. His, it's, I hope I'm saying his name is Amir Dynast. Amir Dynast. Now he's from here in the United States, but I think he still lives here. I think he lives down in Georgia, but he's a dyed in the wool Pan-Africanist. I mean, he's straight up Pan-Africanist. And, you know, I mean, there are some things I definitely don't agree with. Like, he's really into, you know, getting back to even the original African languages like voodoo. Like, he's really into that. Just like you hear people like Tariq Nasheed and others that kind of float that around. Like, we need to get back to voodoo, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, you know, that's what got us in trouble in the first place. But he, you know, but again, so don't run with that and say you can't trust anything he's saying. I want to play this short part of this video because just like me, just like many of you, he's a student of history and just wants to learn more. And so what he did was he actually went to Benin, and he's actually boots on the ground, went to Benin and sat down with one of the elders and pretty much asked them this question about, you know, were these people, was Ouidah ever supposed to be the kingdom of Judah, like in the Bible? So let me put this up on screen, and then we can take a listen at this. And yeah, we're almost finished here, family. But I wanted to get all that reading out of the way first so that you can really get, you know, that info. All right, so let me go ahead and play this. And I'm not going to play the whole video. I'll just play part of it, okay? Here we go. Okay, as soon as I get the volume up here. Hold on for a second. Let me see here. Sorry.
Especially for black people, people of African descent.
I'll go back here.
To pray. This woman you have to see.
Okay.
She's the first personality of this house. But he, the man that you can see there, he is selected to pray for the voodoo in this house, to give them water, to give them drinks, or when people need somebody to talk with the voodoo, he's the one, the messenger.
Okay.
You understand? The one who should take care of those voodoo here. But if you need a chief of the house, it is this woman.
Okay.
That's what he's trying to say. He's asking for a permission to stay.
Okay, no problem, no problem. So we're here in Ouidah, Benin. The Voodoo Festival just wrapped up on January 10th. So now, like last year, I'm just going to see different chiefs, priests, to just ask questions so we can start setting the record straight on voodoo. Because like I've said in the past, especially for black people, people of African descent, before Islam, before Christianity, you know, this is what we practice. This, animism, I mean, pretty much some form of voodoo that is now considered taboo because of us being brainwashed. So I just want to ask questions, get the facts. We're here at the source. So, you know, I'm not talking to some fake chief in America somewhere or somebody online. We're here in Ouidah, which is considered the capital of voodoo in the world. Just a little history on Benin or Ouidah. Benin is the only country that acknowledges voodoo as its national religion. Is that correct?
Yeah, really.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, you know, that's why I consider Benin. I know many people in Nigeria or other countries might be somewhat offended who practice voodoo, but again, Benin is the only country that acknowledges voodoo as its national religion. So once again, we just want to ask some questions, set the record straight on voodoo again, and then, you guys could watch these videos and enjoy them and appreciate them. So now, if you have any questions on voodoo, at least you'll have a resource to go to, an authentic resource where there's no question that it's authentic. So the chief had to step away for a second, so we're about to get started here shortly.
Okay, if I have brought you here first, it is because here is my origin.
Okay.
The voodoo that governs me is here, is in this room.
Okay.
You understand?
I understand.
That is why I decided to start from here. If you don't tell about yourself, you cannot go elsewhere.
Okay.
That's why I have brought you here.
And I'll ask the question later, but while it was on my mind, I'd like to talk to you about your personal experience with voodoo. But we'll do it later because I don't want to hold the elder up. So the first question is, there's a lot of debate. Sometimes you see voodoo spelled V-O-O-D-O-O. You'll see it spelled V-O-D-U-N or V-O-D-O-U-N. Is there really any difference in it, in the different spellings as far as the actual practice, or is it just the spelling and translation?
It's just the spelling, matter of translation.
Okay.
Because, it depends on the language. Otherwise, we know voodoo here.
Okay.
Voodoo.
So
when English people would like to write it, they write the way they hear it. They could spell it. French people also, when they want to write it, they write in their way. Otherwise, it is voodoo.
Okay. Yeah. So just to make that clear, there's no difference in if I spell it V-O-O-D-O-O or V-O-D-U-N or V-O-D-O-U-N.
Not at all.
There's no difference.
No difference.
Just the spelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spelling. But when we want to write it in font, when we want to write it in font, it is a D-O-U-N.
Okay, in phone.
Yeah.
D-O-O-U-N.
And yeah.
Okay, and then I guess in French.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so in phone is V-O-D.
Yeah. U-N.
U-N.
Yeah.
And in French, I guess it's V-O-D-O-U-N.
Yeah.
Okay.
In English people, I noticed that some writing is V-O-O-D-O-O.
Yeah, that's how we...
No, that we don't know that.
Okay.
They just write it the way they call it. Otherwise, there's no difference.
There's no difference in actual religion, just the way we spell it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Can you tell the elder, the question that I asked?
Okay. No, they don't know how to read.
Oh, okay.
They do not.
Okay. All right, no problem. Next question. Now, this has to do with Ouidah, the city. In America, people say that Ouidah means Juda from the Bible. Is there any truth to that? Is there any truth, like, as a tribe outside of the phone called Hebrew Israelites, have they ever came or settled here in Ouidah and called it Judah, but then changed the name back to Ouidah? Is there any truth to that?
I think now that is nonsense. Because we have nothing like Judah in our things. When we hear Ouidah, Ouidah, even the real name is Ouidah. Ouidah. Because the people who are living here in the former time are Ouidah.
Okay.
People who speak Ouidah.
Okay.
Now, when the settlers came, I mean the Europeans, talking about the French people, Portuguese, we have also American, we have different masters that time at colonial time, So when they wanted to pronounce Ouidah, French people say Ouidah, and Portuguese say Juda, other people say Ouidah.
Right.
So we have different spelling according to their maternal tongue.
Okay.
The maternal tongue of the settlers.
Okay.
So the real name of our city is Ouidah.
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 Okay.
Ouidah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
So you never heard of, and you can ask this to the elder.
Yeah.
Has the elder ever heard of a tribe called the Hebrew Israelites settling here in Ouidah and calling it Judah at one time?
Et là, le pas quand on est là, mais étant là dedans, dédié là, Ouidah, c'est là que Juda il m'a dit là, et là nous voulons que le Juda, si tu veux, des dominants qu'on fait des matériels là, le haut ouais même gars c'est mais si comme un Juda là, on donne nous comme on vla voir dit, il est balancé. They are surprised that they have never heard that name.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing this, because there's a lot of misinformation and lies being spread in America.
Okay,
so we want to get the record straight and the facts.
They are really wrong.
Okay.
Nobody knows about Judah here.
Okay.
Maybe when you go in religion like Christianity, or you may hear of those names, but in our tradition, there's no name, no king, nobody has been Judah here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, let me stop there with that video. So, so I know that for some people that may be watching this, you know, you may say, well, you know, he doesn't like us in the first place, or, you know, so why are you taking his advice? You know, it's not about not liking. This is a person that basically went to the source. He asked an elder, just like when some of our people may go to a source and ask the elders there, and this is the answer that he's being given by the people who were born and bred there. And I'm going to say this, for those of us in the diaspora, particularly for us here in America, this is one of the things we got to be very careful with in, you know, acting as if we can bring correction to people who were born and bred in their land. And it's almost like we have this thing where we think we can kind of, you know, no, we're going to tell you your history, you know, but we've never set foot over there. You know, and so it's very prideful and it's really arrogant, quite honestly. And so regardless of what this Amir Dinas, what he believes or what does he does not believe or doesn't want to believe or not, the fact is he went to Benin, he went to Ouidah, he spoke to the elder and had this other person there, and he was able to confirm there that no, nobody's ever, you know, nobody's ever heard of that. Now, that's just one person, but this is why we spent so much time in this video looking at historical documented records to show that what he's saying, it jives with what we read. So, you know, so I just wanted to take the time to show you that particular video so you can see for yourself, you know, no, these weren't our people at all. Let me see the next video that I have here. Let me show you this video here. Now, this video is, these are two women from Benin, and they are explaining the role of Benin or Ouidah, they may say Benin here, role in the slave trade. So you can kind of understand. Again, all of these videos here are just pretty much designed really to drive the point home that we've been establishing here in this particular video. Let's go to this video.
Before we move on to the next object, just one last thing in terms of misrepresentations we were talking about. There's such a rich history of Benin, which I think very few people in this country really know about and appreciate. Do you think that the kind of portrayal of resistance as well to you know, the strength and resistance to the British Empire has been underrepresented as well? Yourself, do you think there's, because we often hear of you know, the difficulties African people had, that they were taken over, they were turned into slaves, and this, you know, whereas we very rarely hear of areas of Africa which were successfully
to talk about this.
Yes.
Because we're talking about the celebration of 200 years of the bi-century celebration of slave trade. You don't talk about slave trade with African communities without talking about the riverine areas, because it was the riverine chiefs that really had one-to-one contact with the European masters or the slave masters. Benin Kingdom, yes, was at the coast, but the Obas were so powerful, and they were a little bit. Benin is not like a riverine city or town; it's like an inland, and it was difficult for people to go a little bit inland. I'm sure that was one of the reasons they had, you know, for having that extra stronghold. There was this barrier of having to go interland to get more slaves from the Benin Kingdom. And in Benin today, we have what we call moat all around the city. Yeah. It's like a big, you dig holes all around the city to prevent people from accessing the inner lands. When the white masters came into Africa, when they first visited Africa, they visited the coastal areas because the ships would come, they would first visit the coastal area. So they had main contact with the fishermen, the chiefs, and the kings on the riverine area. The contact they had with the inner land where the coastal chiefs played the middleman role between the inner land chiefs and the white men. Okay. So they didn't have a direct contact with the inner lands. But much later, of course, yes, they did. But I think that was much after the slave trade had gone down a little bit. The roots had gone down a little bit and we were beginning to. But they did try. They tried to do that, but they didn't succeed because the Benin kingdom was very powerful and these men were great warriors. So they fought. Yeah,
there were, I mean, even in areas where slaves were captured, you know, initially there was resistance. And, you know, they tried, but because the Europeans came, you know, they had, you know, all the weapons and whatever, they were able to overcome. But it wasn't like it was easy for them to penetrate certain areas of that region. So they met with resistance initially, and that's the kind of resistance she was talking about. Because like what he mentioned, the Benin kingdom they had trenches dug around the city, and those trenches were meant, you know, during the times of wars and everything, even when they were fighting battles, you know, with other kingdoms or whatever, those trenches were meant to protect them and to help them, you know, because when you are coming as an army and you don't know, you know, if you don't know the what's it called, the land of the land, yeah.
The
geography of the area, you find that you just plunge head on into those trenches. You know, so it was
inland. It wasn't on the coastal region, so you don't have direct access.
So they did meet with a lot of resistance, you know.
So what they're establishing here is that Benin, you know, that area, it was very well fortified. And so that's why I said that they couldn't just roll up in there. That's why that reading that we did where that guy wrote that letter and he was like, oh, you know, we were able to sit down with the king and all this. And they, you know, the Philistines, the Portuguese, they, you know, they kind of being sheepish and being humble, you know, because this is what they dealt with when they first got there. They couldn't just roll up in there like they did, unfortunately, with Congo. And so anyway, that's what they're talking about now.
Just to add a little to what she said regarding to the slave trade, the Benin themselves took their own people, which is not behaving, which is a destroyer. When Oba is trying to repair and is destroying, killing children, making crops in the farm not to grow, things are not moving on. Any family that had such a person, when the slave masters came, they would just take that person and hand over, because it's an abomination to kill in that land. Just kill your own people. It was an abomination. Mm-hmm. All they did is just to hand over them, those type of people, to the slave masters. That is the only time the Benin were involved in slave trade. Okay. If you go to Museum Dock in Liverpool, the first talk there, you see a man involved with Benin, one of the European then in them days. You hear what the man says about Benin. And two, we are not here for that today. When James Philip went to the sea, he thought it was wise. He went to Benin, went to the palace, he was welcome, everybody received him, not knowing he had come to Benin to corner the king. This is the time of Ovorani. I'm talking now about 1875 to 1897. He was the only one who went there. He thought he could corner them, but at the time they realized he has soldiers in the sea, everybody in the sea, then the warriors, they now came out and said, oh gentlemen, isn't so? We've called you a friend, we've received you, treat you well, you can't come and betray us. Then that is where the Benin massacre came out. You see, all the sheep that went to Benin never came back. Nobody will kill them. They became pregnant overnight, where a man will carry pregnancy and in the morning it's gone. Benin has a way of fighting. And the Benin massacre too, I think is still very fresh in every European's mind till tomorrow.
I know it was a little difficult maybe to hear what she's saying there, but just in summarization, she's just explaining their role in that slave trade there. So, but yeah, so, so again, and then like we read in that earlier account that this was a writing back in 2000, as late as 2004, that according to this one particular person, he said they showed very little remorse, even as recent as 2004 about the whole slave trade thing and selling us into slavery. So again, these are not our people, not at all. They're not, and you don't hear any account of Judah selling Judah into slavery. Okay, then I got this one last video here. I'm just going to play a little bit of this. And this is talking about the voodoo that is practiced in Benin, in modern day Benin, or more specifically in the town of Ouidah. Okay, let me pull that up and let me play this.
C'est la fête de vaudou.
Ok.
On tue des moutons ici.
Oh, je vois.
Et le chef de famille, il vient prendre la tête de mouton.
Ok.
Pour faire des cérémonies.
Laquelle famille?
Famille ça.
La famille de
Abotabo.
Oh, ok.
Lui, il vient ici prendre la tête.
Ok.
On fait des cérémonies encore dans des maisons aussi.
Oh, je vois. Oh, ok. Très bien.
Ici,
oui, je viens. Ok.
Ça, c'est le couvent de Vaudou.
Le couvent de Vaudou.
La chambre de Vaudou.
Ok.
Mais quand on parle de Vaudou, le Vaudou, c'est une religion traditionnelle.
Oui, je sais.
Comme catholique, islam.
See there? A religion like Catholic Christianity.
À Togo, en
Haïti,
Cuba, Brésil,
Haiti.
Dans ce couvent, quand on n'est pas initié, on ne rentre pas dedans.
Oh, ok.
On peut rester devant la porte pour les leçons encore organisées.
Mais si je suis initié, je peux faire l'entrée.
Tu peux faire rentrer.
Ah, ok, je vois.
Le mur qui est dedans, le mur là, ça a été construit vers 1777. 1777.
Oh, je vois, c'est
très longtemps. C'est agile, c'est clé.
Oui, je sais.
Et là, et au niveau de la fête, Ouidah 92, on a fait les poteaux, là, en béton, quoi. Solide pour garder les poids de la toiture.
Oh, ok.
Pour transformer la réparation.
Ouais. Parce que ça fait longtemps. Ok.
Ça, c'est la jarre de purification.
Jarre de la purification.
Oui. L'ouverture est en bas. La jarre, il est fermé.
Ok.
On retourne la jarre une fois tous les 7 ans.
7 ans.
Oui.
Ok. Mais il y a quelque chose dedans maintenant.
Là, c'est vide.
Ok.
En ouvrant,
il
est déposé dehors devant les temples.
Ok.
Et tous les chefs de vaudou, ils amènent les feuilles sacrées. Les feuilles qui peuvent guérir.
Okay, so he's just going through, describing the details of, the voodoo stuff that they do there. I'm trying to skim through here and see if he has anything else in here. So yeah, it's just more of the same. He's talking about that and all. There was another thing I had too. It was a really, really short video, but basically it showed you, and you can do a search for this yourself. In Benin, there's a road that the slaves walked on, and I think it comes from Savi in that area, or Ouidah all the way to the coastline, and it's a wide road, and that's where the slaves walked that road all the way up to the ship. So, if you want to look that up on your own, you can certainly look that one up here. Okay, and I think I have one more slide here as soon as I can find my stuff here. So what he was talking about as far as the voodoo stuff that's concerned, again, because now we've established that Ouidah is not Judah. Okay. Number two, it's far from it. It's far from it. In fact, they were dedicated to their own deities, their own gods. And then we just learned here that their religion was voodoo. They're considered today the headquarters of voodoo. But Benin, as you know, isn't the only place where you will see voodoo. You will see it, like he mentioned, Ghana, Nigeria. You'll see this practice throughout the continent of Africa, but you will also see this in the Caribbean. And then in the Caribbean, it takes a very interesting twist. and I don't have any videos, but I will show you this. So you could take a look here, what's on the screen here. And so they have, because, okay, in voodoo, well, we pronounce it voodoo, in Benin, they worship, they were trying to say that this goddess Urzuli, and honestly, I don't care if I'm saying it, mispronouncing it or not, quite honestly, but in this particular case, but let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. And but she's actually a water spirit. Okay, this is actually a water spirit. But notice the swords. Okay, notice the swords here. And then, you know, down I'm starting down here below here. Okay. Let me see, I'll just make it bigger here so you can see some of this here. Okay. So yeah, the red eyes. They make a big thing about the red eyes of this particular goddess. And like I said, notice on one hand, she's a loving god or goddess or whatever, protector of her people and all that. But on the other hand, she doesn't play when, you know, that kind of thing. And notice the swords. And then this is just a kind of a drawing of all the different gods and goddesses, you know, that are seen throughout the continent. And you'll see some of the ones that we mentioned here that are just drawn out. Okay. Ogun or Ojun, the god of war. Again, we're back to these swords again. Okay. And then also you'll see this here too. This is them in the middle of their praise and worship to their god or their goddesses. And you notice what you see what they have in their hands. It's the same thing. Now, this actually what they'll tell you is that this actually was the reason why they add a different twist to this is you know, during the uprising against the French, you know, it's said that they used these machetes as a way of resistance. But it's a lot deeper than that, you know, but this is how they come into praise and worship, you know, in Haiti and Dominican, and it was another, I think this on the right is in the Dominican, if I'm not mistaken, because I grabbed that from somewhere. I think that's a Dominican, if I'm not mistaken, but it's in the Caribbean, no doubt. And but yeah, that's how they come into praise and worship. So you'll see this, like I said, again, it's in the diaspora. It doesn't stop in the Caribbean. You'll see that even over here in the United States, you know, and beyond as well, you know, just carrying on this same type of worship to their god, to their goddesses and stuff. And but all this stems from what, you know, going all the way back here, what we were saying, what quite a few people have been teaching, was the kingdom of Judah. And this is not the kingdom of Judah at all. You know, these were not our people. These people were on a whole new different level. They were on a whole different course. Like, what I told you earlier about how they had this one particular guy who was deified, you know, because of him sacrificing to whatever God he was worshiping, and causing ships, according to the, you know, what was the account, causing ships to shipwreck, forcing them to come to their land so that they can buy us. And that's how deep they were when it comes to this whole, you know, thing here. So anyway, I know this video is over 2 hours long. So if you made it to this far, congratulations, you made it to the end. But yeah, it had to be this long because, again, this is something that goes pretty deep with a lot of our people. Again, you know, like I said, going back to Pastor Darby, you know, I'm quite confident he wasn't aware of all of this stuff. But again, you know, please don't take him or his memory and just say, okay, we just memory hole it. No, it was very instrumental. Remember, the script, going back to the scripture that I showed you earlier. Let me go back to it. And we know that all things work together for the good for them who love Yah, to them who are called according to his purpose. If you truly love him, the Most High will use anything, even if it's inaccurate information. If you're truly pursuing him, he's going to take that information and he's still going to use it for his purpose. And it's still going to keep you on the right path. And just that information he provided, even with that, it helped us to dig deeper. you know, and in digging deeper, we were able to find other truths that were able to, you know, that we was able to add, you know, that helped us to clear things up a little bit. But you still have people within Israel who still hold on to this, you know, and no, that's not true at all, you know, when it comes to that being, as far as that's being Judah. And like I said, getting back to this map again, family, listen, you know, back to the other topic that we talked about, you know, family, we do not have to lie. We do not have to exaggerate at all about our history. All we need to do is just look at our history as is. That's all we got to do. Look at our history as is. The Most High has put so many breadcrumbs in there that ultimately lead to him. You know what I'm saying? They ultimately lead to him. We don't have to make anything up, family. If we just look at our own history, follow those breadcrumbs, and it will lead us to him ultimately. All right. So family, thank you so much for taking the time and watching this video, and you may have to watch it again and catch some of those references that I gave you. And do take the time and look those things up. Don't just take my word for it. Do your own research. Okay, family? All right. Love you very much. And may the Most High bless you and keep you. And we'll be seeing you in the next video. You guys take care. Love you.